The Gospel of Mark is written in 3 acts. The first act in Galilee, the second has Jesus traveling about, and the third takes place in Jerusalem. Mark 9 is the second act. The second act especially is written in individual moments or standalone events. There are independent stories of miraculous events and healings, discussions with disciples, and the sharing now and then of a parable. This section has us traveling all over the map. Our reading today has us in Galilee with Jesus and the disciples. Jesus does not want anyone to know. Jesus and the disciples journey into the region away from the towns because Jesus has serious things to share with the disciples, and Jesus does not want to be interrupted or overheard. Secondly, the reading has us visit Capernaum. The disciples are with Jesus, and Jesus speaks with them. Different from the region of Galilee journey, here they are not alone. We know this because Jesus draws a child into their midst, which suggests there are others around too. It is okay for others to overhear this conversation. What drew my attention this week was the use of specific places for specific tasks and ministry. The second act of the Gospel of Mark illustrates that there are different messages and ways of communicating or acting for various contexts and audiences. Individuals have an array of needs and are at unique points in their faith journey requiring intentionally focused care. I had a conversation with a person this week who shared with me a profound God moment. God appeared at an auspicious time for this person, in a moment of choice, where choosing temptation would have been life-destructing. To get their attention, God appeared in an over-the-top manner that for most of us would be so bizarre and risque, we would not have seen God in it at all. Yet for this person, their personality, this was the way they woke up to God's presence. Knowing the person, it made perfect sense to me that God's specific message to them was delivered in the extraordinarily outrageous. This week I also reflected on the conversations I have with people, especially those that I've talked with at the Loneliness Cafe. I get all kinds of God questions or Bible-themed queries, theological questions, and the like. Although the questions might be identical, the answer or reply has never been the same. In fact, sometimes any conversation with one person would be the exact opposite of what I might counsel another. What I have said to you may not be what I have said to the person sitting beside you. I have my own way of teaching and practicing Lutheran theology. I have working definitions for sin, forgiveness, grace, the cross, kingdom. These are descriptions that come from my core beliefs. But when in the world, although holding true to the core, how I express the message changes depending on the conversation, the context, relationship, and where a person is on their journey. With the rise of open conversations around mental health, more practitioners share ways that ordinary people can support the mental health and well-being of others. A highly recommended practice is to hold space for others. PsychologyToday.com says that holding space is, in addition to the safe environment and full presence, holding space involves active listening. The listener is present for the speaker's experience, does not make the conversation about them, does not shut down difficult conversation, and does not shy away from strong feelings. Likewise, HolisticWellnessPractice.com says, show up for someone, be fully present, without judgment as you sit with that person through their difficult time. The independent stories and miraculous events of Jesus' ministry, as presented in the Gospel of Mark, demonstrate and embody holding space. In each healing, each casting out of demons, Jesus is present with the individual. No judgment, no conditions. Each context and experience are unique. You will recall a few weeks ago, some were healed by words, sight unseen, and others were physically touched. Holding space. Jesus takes the disciples aside, alone, to share information that will be challenging and difficult to digest. Jesus needs to provide a space where he can sit with the disciples without distractions, where questions can be asked, where disciples can feel and process that Jesus is going to die in order to bring God's kingdom. Holding space. In Capernaum, Jesus creates and holds space in a conversation with the disciples, creating and holding a space for eavesdroppers in the room. By physically setting a child in the middle of the conversation, Jesus expands what holding space means. In the safe circle of the disciples' conversation, Jesus challenges those present and the listener to sit with and welcome the marginalized. In the first century, children were considered less than human, at best property, and here Jesus extends welcome. Holding space. I have never seen these words included in the job description of a pastor, yet most of what I do is holding space for others. Pastoral care visits, grief counseling, facilitating exploration in study groups, offering coffee and conversation, and sharing in worship and prayer. In this space, during worship, although I move us through the liturgy, it is not I that is entirely responsible for holding space. Holding space is a communal action and a communal ministry. This ministry requires a commitment from all of us to show up, to be present, to welcome the child and the marginalized, to sit together, to listen, to pray, to sing, to share Christ's peace, to be bodies that embody the Christ. Sacred spaces, holding spaces. Communities that hold space are vital for the health and well-being of the wider community. This space is gift. Thank you for holding space with me this morning and participating in this ministry. It is a holy gift that you are offering to each other and to the world. Holding space confounds and scares away some people. Over the 20 years that I have served you, there are those who have left because holding space was a foreign concept. Coming to church was understood and practiced as an individual pursuit, rewarded by personal acquisition, whether in answered prayers, deeper faith, affirming beliefs, or accolades. Some people have left because they were not finding any personal value or reward, missing the point, or choosing to ignore that following Jesus is not about me. Our stories from Mark's Gospel demonstrate Jesus holding space for the disciples, eavesdroppers, children, the marginalized. There are stories of Jesus holding space for himself, self-care, stepping aside, but this action comes out of holding space for others, so that Jesus is able to continue to minister to and be in relationship with others. Jesus' ministry, for the most part, is not about personal acquisition or storing up treasures for himself. Jesus' life and death is about the other. I am often asked, what can I do? How can I serve? I believe that the single greatest ministry of a community of faith is providing a holy holding space for others. Showing up for worship is ministry. And coming here with an attitude and expectation not to acquire value for yourself, but rather a perspective of holding space for others. Consider, today, you may not hear something you desperately wanted to hear because you held space for someone else to hear what they needed to hear. Today, you may leave without your questions or your prayers answered. Instead, you held space for someone else to receive their daily bread. Perhaps you will not hear something that challenges you. You held space for someone else who was challenged by what was said, and it will change their life. And you may leave feeling like you did not experience God today. Remember, you held space for someone else who did experience God. As we hold space for each other, Christ is embodied and present. In this space, through community, through word and sacrament, grace washes over us, all of us, the whole space, and we are held in God's grace upon grace.